I got told I was meeting 2 other people this morning, so I didn't get it done. So in future meetings, we might be using these 2 to engage people remotely and through that microphone there. We're doing it now using the same system with Manchester University, so that us at the clinical side are communicating with them in the research side. We're going to be doing that on a sort of a weekly basis. So we've set that up, and the same system should work for everybody here. That camera though, that camera isn't automatic. You guide it with a remote control. So come questions, I can zoom in on the person.
Not when that's on. We're not recording.
I'll try and record it. I'll try and point it at speakers on the crowd. Right, so the crowd. So Beth has got a couple of things to talk about and will now speak very slowly. Please ask questions.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a little bit of updates on a few projects that we've been running. So you remember the wallet card that you guys very kindly had a proofread of it for me. That's almost ready to start printing now. So we found a company that does the printing, and we got them to send us out some samples, and actually we had to choose a completely different one because the ones that we'd thought about getting, they were too hard to fold back up. And as Chris very kindly pointed out, somebody who's got neuropathy, how is that going to work? It won't. So yeah, hopefully that will be in the next few weeks sent off to the printers, and then we can start distributing them, which is rather exciting. So yeah, next month watch this space. So another thing that I've been involved in at the moment is there's some new diagnostics that have come out, and it's not for CPA or ABPA, it's for the invasive aspergillosis. So like in a typical hospital where you have to send the samples off to the lab, so you've got somebody who's maybe come in with flu or something and they've gone to intensive care, and then they've got a fever and they're not sure what it is. At the moment, this sort of standard thing is give them some antibiotics, send off some blood samples to the lab. But if you're looking for Aspergillus that way, it can be a couple of days or more before you get the results back. And you can imagine somebody who's in such a bad way, they've got whatever they came in with, or it might be somebody who's in a haematology ward, somebody who's had cancer or a bone marrow transplant, or an organ transplant, people that are really immunocompromised. So they've got whatever's wrong with them, plus invasive aspergillosis. You've not really got one or two. You've not got a huge amount of time to play with, and this is just one of the big things that needs to be moved towards in fungal diagnostics is it's called point of care testing, which is essentially just like if you imagine like a pregnancy test, like a little stick that you put in either blood sample or bronchiolar lavage fluid, and then it just gives you like the 1 for no or 2 for yes. And actually there's some other fungal diseases already have this kind of testing in place, and it's fantastic. It just makes a world of difference. But up until now there hasn't been anything for Aspergillus. So the technology that it's based on, so I don't know how familiar everyone is with the different types of tests. So the slowest way to identify to test for it is identification, sort of by culturing it on agar, and that takes a really long time, like could be a week, it could be ages. But it does give you information about what antifungal susceptibility that strain has. So it's worth doing, but you wouldn't do that to do the initial diagnosis. PCR is the molecular test, and again that's quite slow, because when you send something off to the lab, it's not just the amount of time that it takes to run in the machine. Like you can have other things that you wouldn't think of. So these labs, they tend to have, absolutely huge machines, expensive to run, and they'll need, a member of staff to be doing it. So what they can do sometimes is they have to collect up a batch of samples. So if there's only one person has sent a sample in, they'll kind of wait until a few have come and then do them all at once. But that delays it even more. So PCR, that is quite often true. And also the galactomannan ELISA. So that's the test where there's little bits of the fungal cell wall. It sort of sheds and you can find it in your bloodstream. So it's a useful test, but again, it's a couple of days. We want to get around that. So I've got my slides in the moment. So 2 companies, IMI and OLM, they've made these point of care tests, and you can see just a little picture of them there. So they've both made tests that do this now, and this is fantastic because like a ward or a transplant centre, they could just order a box of these tests and have them under the nurse's station. If you're not sure why somebody's got a fever, you can check it, and ruling it in lets you do the treatment faster, and ruling it out means you don't have to give them really toxic drugs. So it's pretty cool, and they're not too expensive either. I haven't got the exact price, but compared to sort of the full lab workup, they're not bad. So this is I've made a little flyer that we're going to be sending out to like critical care units, transplant, haematology around the country, and saying, look, you test for this stuff. And hopefully, once people start thinking along the lines of, oh, could it be fungal? It's not just Aspergillus. Once people have got it in their minds and they're thinking along those lines, there's also sort of things like Candida, Cryptococcus. There's all different fungi. It's just a question of getting people moving in the first place, not just giving antibiotics and then we're done.
So are they developing it for other fungi?
So some other fungi have it already.
Okay.
I don't have a list off the top of my head.
Candida probably has one. Very common.
I don't know actually. I'm not sure. Well, you'd think there would have been an Aspergillus one earlier, but
yeah. And this is exclusively at the moment. This is intended for use in acute invasive.
Yeah.
Chronic. Is there any particular reason why it wouldn't be useful for chronic? So, for example, could we use it to screen people with severe asthma?
So somebody that's got severe asthma, I don't know how much galactomannan they would have. I don't know exactly what the cutoff is.
Right. So there's a bit of development to be done before it would be used on that.
Yeah. So one.
So how do they work? Are they based on the galactomannan?
Yeah, it's an antibody assay. I think one of them is galactomannan itself, and the other one's something very closely related to galactomannan, but not quite the same.
So effectively, it's a fungus that they're detecting in the bloodstream.
Yeah, an antigen test.
Which is why it's useful for immunocompromised people.
Yeah, because the load of galactomannan is going to be a lot higher.
So you'd think it could be useful, and maybe not SAS as such. But if it's a SAS patient, all you need to do is a skin prick test anyway. So that's, although it's not going to give you an answer in 30 minutes. Actually, a skin prick test probably takes weeks to organise, doesn't it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know much about the process.
We had a nurse that used to do them, as somebody might have known. But she no longer works with us, and she specialised in doing the allergens. And now we couldn't provide a skin prick test, probably. You'd have to make an appointment with an allergy doctor to have one done, and that might be a 6-week wait.
It'd probably take 3 or 4 days anyway to get your result.
Yeah. So this could be a really nice screening tool.
Yeah. If we could get it into clinics where they sort of see a few patients that are worth screening a month, it's kind of something you can just have.
It's nice to have
in
a
box.
yes or no.
Yeah.
you're in a train of thought, you're, right, let's test for fungus, because this is what the CDC campaign last year was all about. It was about think fungus for the clinicians.
Yeah.
And now you can think it, in half an hour you can have your result. So
Yeah.
that would be really good.
Yeah.
Did you say with the cryptococcal meningitis, would that test be instead of lumbar puncture?
Very similar. Yeah. Yeah. I think with cryptococcal meningitis, I think normally they would want to do a culture as well for a definitive diagnosis. But for starting treatment, these are really.
So they're implying invasive. Well, that one actually says, but the top one says invasive aspergillosis. That doesn't necessarily mean pulmonary invasive aspergillosis.
It doesn't specify in the literature that we got sent.
So that could be broader, more targeted, more broadly.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that something like this would be really good for is if there's an outbreak of something. So, for example, there was an outbreak of histoplasma in the Dominican Republic, but at first they didn't know what it was because they hadn't had outbreaks before. They just knew that everyone had a fever and were dying. So if there was somebody could sort of send a box of these, post them out, and then just do a quick test, it could have saved lives there, I think.
That's the other thing, isn't it? It's very low skilled.
Yeah, low skill, low resource.
And I presume they would keep in 35 degrees of temperature
Yeah.
quite easily.
Yeah, you don't have to have a full lab set up or anything.
So perfect for the developing world.
Yeah, sort of for sort of rural clinics or like a doctor that just goes out to see people. It's
developed
amazing.
by what's the guy's name? Hanu? No.
Can't remember.
We actually worked with the guy. One of these was developed with us, and we worked with the guy. We were desperately trying to remember. He's from the Philippines. We've got an odd name, so you can see why the Philippines would be interested in helping develop. But
Yeah.
the kit was developed in North Wales.
Yeah.
I think the other one's from Exeter way, somewhere down south.
Yeah, I think something like that. So at the moment, point of care tests for Wythenshawe Hospital, our biochemistry lab kind of takes charge of that, and that's really good because while you can just use it straight out of the box and it works, what they do is they do a lot of extra sort of verification and validation, so they know exactly how it works in our population. Because like if you use the same test in different parts of the world, there might be differences in how it works, and it means that. So I think for the ones that we've already got, they're all not for Aspergillus, but other point of care tests we've got. They've actually done the ISO accreditation for that, so that's really nice to have as that standard. And possibly Manchester Reference Centre of Mycology. No, Mycology Reference Centre in Manchester. They might be doing that verification and validation for the Aspergillus point of care tests, but that's not definitely. So that's Malcolm Richardson. I don't know if you've seen the picture of him before.
Yes, we really need to get another photo taken.
Oh, I think that one's pretty good.
We've seen that for about 5 years now. There's no one who's got any hair.
Okay.
Right. Oh, speaking of Malcolm, are you going to do your leaflet thing, or did you already?
That wasn't very much to say.
Okay.
Can I just ask something?
Oh yeah.
Did you put something on Facebook about the possibility of the invasive being caught through people breathing
Yes.
the
breathing out distance.
yes,
That
the
was
breathing
me,
out
yes.
the spore.
Yes.
So that would be in an intensive care situation.
So the two cases that have been recorded, one case was a few years ago, and that particular person had had a liver transplant and was got an aggressive invasive aspergillosis. So he was really heavily infected to it, and he was traced to have infected people in the same ward.
So even though it was invasive in the liver, it still...
Well, it would have been in his lungs.
Yes, it goes into the lungs as well.
Yeah,
Because
because he's had a liver
bloodstream.
transplant.
Yeah.
So he's breathed in. Things have not gone well. He's got more and more poorly. He's got major infection of his lungs, and they detected spores from the fungus that was infecting him in 2 or 3 patients in the close vicinity. And because it was a transplant ward, they follow it. Okay, so the really ill people, and as a general rule, exhaling, you probably, that was an invasive aspergillosis, so you're really full of the fungus when that's happening, so that could be why they were exhaling spores.
So presumably now, if they know that somebody's got the invasive, then
That's exactly.
They would have to isolate them.
So the second paper was just one more case, which was someone who had an invasive aspergillosis and were on a ventilator for over 100 days, and eventually died from invasive aspergillosis. And they found spores from that person's infection in the air conditioning, in the filters that were designed to so the suggestion from the second paper, which was a case from 2015, was exactly what you're saying, which is that we have to have a rethink in that situation, that one patient could infect other patients.
Especially as all the others are already at risk.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit worried that somebody's going to read that and go, right, you've got aspergillosis, we have to isolate you from everybody else. It's totally different. ABPA is something that's enclosed in, and CPA is enclosed in cavities rather than actually in your airways as such. So I would expect them not to be breathing out.
I would have thought anyway, if you were in general breathing somehow, it's not going to be more than is in the air anyway, and you're not next to people who are compromised.
So they only noticed in the situation with the patients around, in a ward where everyone's immunocompromised because they've had transplants, and they're closely monitoring everybody.
I mean, the fact that it's detectable in sputum implies that if people cough, the chances are
There might be an aerosol there with some spores in.
When I've been really, really poorly, I can taste the stuff in me as well. I can eat constantly.
Yeah.
Like you would if you, I don't know, with the
I can imagine.
The smell, nicotine or what. I can taste it in the air that I'm breathing out.
Yeah.
Which is quite weird because you breathe in, which is when normally you get smells and stuff going into your airways. But it was when I was breathing out.
Yeah.
So I'd go.
There's a few people I know who describe that.
And different bugs can cause different smells as well.
Yeah, because I said something, someone mentioned this years ago, and they said, I forget how they described the smell. And I mentioned it to David Denning, and he said, oh, that's an infection of the sinus by a particular bacterium, and it causes it, and that's why you can, when you breathe in, you can smell it. And I think it was rifampicin, he said, to cure it. So, So it is known, yes. Well, but if it's in your nose.
No, my sinuses are fine, so. And my chest wouldn't be fine. So.
Yeah. So if it's in your chest, when you breathe out, you'd smell it.
Pseudomonas can't be as opposed to normal respiratory pathogens.
Yeah. So. Okay.
It comes into infectious diseases as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
Which makes people think, ooh.
Well, that's it. And people say, and it's been on Facebook again this week, is ABPA contagious? Well, in the classical meaning of the term contagious, it's not. It's nowhere near being contagious, because you will not spread it just by sitting in this room. It will be. But if you were sitting in a room of people who were immunocompromised, then.
But we are really as well, aren't we?
Yeah, but in a clean room rather than a room that's already got lots of spores and stuff. Essentially, I in the past I've thought that I've assumed that people who are neutropenic are kept in clean rooms, but that actually doesn't happen very much. You can only do that if you've got the dedicated facilities, and there aren't that many of those around. So you have people doing transplants or undergoing transplants who are quite neutropenic. I know are in rooms that we just make a best effort to keep clean from what I have accumulated from papers. This is 5 years ago. Maybe now those facilities are better organised, but I was really quite shocked that they actually do these things. And then they say, and about 5% get aspergillosis. And I think, well, do something about it then. It just seems odd.
I guess, they're all linked into the same air conditions.
Yeah.
Probably, I suspect that most of these places don't have that.
So I was surprised. Yeah. I was surprised that was the attitude, but maybe we haven't got the facilities, so we make a best effort, and you absolutely need the transplant now, so the benefit is higher than the risk, and they'll go ahead. So anyway, so the other thing I've been investigating is how to use this rather nice board. I should be able to draw on it. And there's the software to do it, so I'm going to fiddle with that later. Right, you're all aware that Malcolm's been doing this project where he's collecting dust from your vacuum cleaners. Just to let everybody know, and I just looked a minute ago, there's 6 other people watching, so it's a full room. He's still collecting dust because we've got, the way it works is, if you want to do these genomic searches on microbes, you get a price of whatever it is, and you get sent a plate which has got 96 wells on it. Maybe 5 or 10 of those will be controls. So we've got 86 wells to fill, all for the same price. So at the moment we've still got spare wells, so we'd just as soon as fill them as not. So if anybody out there has still got a vacuum, if you've got AVPA or CPA, CPA, and you fancy joining in this project, then let me know.
You have to be a patient here though, Graham.
No, we're now accepting anybody. This is the title. I'll just read the slides that I wrote so I can go through. We're getting people from overseas sending stuff in, but basically it's really nice if we have your full patient history. That forms the main body of what we're trying to do. But as these things are spare, if we can fill them with people from different parts of the world, we'll get a different story. And if they've got ABPA or CPA, that kind of adds to the story, even though we don't know what the sputum status was. So it adds a little bit. At least we're not wasting those wells completely. So the study is about comparison of the microbiome of sputum with dust from CPA patients' homes. So for the people that we haven't got sputum for, we're just going to be comparing dust from patients' homes. This is the stuff we need. Just a few pinches of this hairy, fairy dust stuff in a bag. And there is the contact address if you want to get involved, which is me, graham.atherton@manchester.ac.uk. Send me postal address and details of what form of aspergillosis you have. It might also be interesting if people want to send in samples, for example, if they've got fungally sensitive asthma, might be interesting, and Aspergillus bronchitis, but I think all those people are here, so that might be interesting. Because we've got loads of time, I'll go off on a tangent in a minute, but go on.
Yeah, assuming that there is a correlation.
Yeah.
Well, I know that's
Yeah.
what it's to test.
Yeah.
But then you've got to ask the question, surely, is this cause or effect?
Yeah.
So, is there any plans to extend that?
Absolutely, of course. Yeah. Yeah. First, we got to.
People move in house. Can we test it before we know?
First, we've got to establish the association.
Yeah.
Now, it's the first attempt that I'm aware of to correlate lung microbiome with house microbiome, but there have been studies where it's debatable whether your home takes on your microbiome or you take on your house's microbiome. But in the end of the day, it seems that you will come to match your home. It's not that difficult to imagine that all the microbes growing on outside and inside you will eventually grow on the inside of your home. That's how it happens. Or vice versa. And then you add in pets. What happens then? And so on. And those sorts of studies are being done. But we do know that there is a broad similarity between the two. Is your lung microbiome equivalent to your house microbiome? Is really the question that or your airways, I should say, is that we're trying to have. So it's a refinement of that question. So it'll be interesting to see what we see. Malcolm's done, as you have to do, he's done a small study, and as far as I can work out, he's concluded that there is an awful lot of Aspergillus in the homes of people with Aspergillosis. So I would say that tends to suggest your home is influencing your lung microbiome, but we don't know. Could be either way. Yeah. I know you don't do the hoovering.
I won't disagree, but since I've been diagnosed with Aspergillosis, I've moved.
Right.
So it's infected another house.
So you've changed your...
From the house that was built like 150 years ago to one that was only built 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And the health stayed the same, didn't deteriorate or get any better really.
Yeah. Well, I suspect as you have your infection, that's going to stay regardless of where you go now. And like you say, maybe that has an impact on the microbiome of your
If you
home.
move again, hoover before you move in.
Yeah.
Well, we moved
Move
from
with
a
a new
house.
house when you get there.
We moved from a
It makes
house which was fully
comparison.
carpeted, and I know it got Aspergillus in the wardrobes because it was a cold room. And we moved from that, we moved into this bungalow. We did all the wooden flooring and blinds, no carpets whatsoever. So we tried to cut every bit of.
And you find that lowers the levels of symptoms
I think
and
I did
inflammation.
better, do you? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of you're lowering the whole allergen. Like right now, a lot of people are having difficulty with pollen because it increases the general levels of inflammation, and we're all feeling grotty. I don't have hay fever, but I can feel this effect in my breathing, especially in the morning when I've been asleep. So chronic inflammation, chronic seasonal inflammation is probably what we should be calling it. I haven't written it down here, but I read yesterday a paper that relates to this, in that someone has done a study looking at people with bronchiectasis, a type of lung damage, and looked at the microbiome of those people. And just like with SAFs, where we see Aspergillus or other fungi strongly correlating with the severity of the asthma, we see exactly the same story in bronchiectasis, and that's not been shown before. It's just published yesterday. So what's that telling us? Is bronchiectasis encouraging fungal infection, or is it the other way around? Well, we tend to think it's the other way around. I think you are predisposed to some form of fungal infection, possibly genetic, possibly a home you've lived in, and that's played a part in the severity of bronchiectasis, perhaps. We've never seen that before. We're seeing more and more of these studies coming out now, which is great, except they almost raise more questions than the answer. And lots of people sort of make that face and go, so what does it all mean? It'll be another 10 years before we know.
I thought, you start off with asthma and you get lots of infections like pneumonia and bronchitis.
Yeah.
Then that goes on to damage with the bronchiectasis. because of the damage you get the Aspergillosis ppm.
And the important experiment, if you like, with severe asthma was we gave them an antifungal. And when we give them an antifungal, they get better, or they improve. Their symptoms stabilise. So that's arguing that the fungus is having a direct effect on the severity of the asthma. So it's the fungus causing the severity, not the other way around. Bronchiectasis, that's the next important experiment. And the experiment with asthma has now been repeated about 6 times in different groups, and we get similar results. So that's quite an established thing now. Don't really know why chest clinics up and down the country aren't leaping on this, testing people for fungi and giving them antifungals. Possibly because it costs money, or
Education.
all the side effects. You know, they have to be convinced that they're doing more good than harm by giving someone an antifungal drug like itraconazole.
That's better than just going on steroids.
You'd have thought so, and you would have thought it would arrest the severity of the asthma in its tracks and stop it.
And pulsating.
Yeah. So you'd have thought so.
I guess it's also true again that the relationship between this kind of what comes first, the lung damage or the fungal infection, or which causes which, it also rather depends on what type of aspergillosis you're talking about, I guess. Because it seems to me those who have allergic ABPA essentially have a genetic deficiency which says you're not going to deal with Aspergillus spores that you breathe in, and therefore you may be prone to Aspergillus growing in your lungs. Some of the other forms, it would seem to me, would perhaps suggest that they arise because the lung damage is there in the first place.
Yes, true. Yeah.
And of course, you add in other factors such
Yeah.
as people are immunocompromised. But so it seems to me the relationship here depends a little bit on which type of aspergillosis you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that some GPs have clearly anecdotally observed that when they put patients on antifungals, other conditions improve. And that might be their asthma. I've also had it said to me about eczema as well.
Yes.
So clearly GPs are building up in their own minds an understanding that says, although we've not read necessarily the specific scientific literature on this, there clearly appears to be situations where both where the inflammatory process is overactive or whatever, and that situation may be caused by a fungus or may be exacerbated by the presence of fungus. The difficulty is that if you've got an enlightened GP, they will tend to try things and say, actually, let's just give you, you've tried, your eczema is not responding very well, let's just give you a week's antifungal, which my GP has done, but I'm not sure they all would. So
they're more likely to do it now because the antifungals are becoming more affordable, I guess.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I guess, and understandably, the major body of medical opinion, the GPs are not necessarily going to react, going to do anything until they get instruction from NICE that says this is now
Yes.
the
So it's the difference between doing, once NICE say do it, then you'll have to do it.
Yeah.
Because you can say, as the patient, you can say, I want it, and they have to do it.
Yeah.
And up to that point, it's up, the doctor has to do it off-label, and it's up down to their professional opinion.
Yeah.
And they have to be very sure that if something goes wrong, they get taken to court, they can say, well, I did it because these papers told me it was a good idea. There is strong evidence to support what they did, and not just I read it in the Daily Express or whatever. Interestingly, on eczema, damp homes correlate with eczema.
Yeah.
Damp homes and mouldy homes correlate with eczema.
Yeah.
And the thing I'd like to see happen in damp homes is for those people to be given an antifungal and see if that makes a difference in that population. But they're never going to do that because there's not enough evidence to suggest that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's a case of benefit versus risk, I guess. So, yes, please send in more dust if you want to join the trial. I don't know when this appeal is going to end. I believe we've got another year to do it.
Not having done it yet, I should really.
So I think it's...
Anybody done it yet?
Yeah.
So what did you actually do? Just send your consent form in?
Yes.
And then the stuff got sent to you?
Yes.
you need a kit.
Because the consent form doesn't seem to tell them very much apart from your name, but presumably with your name, they can access the details from here.
It was originally designed so that for our patients we would have access to sputum samples. If we've not got enough numbers from our patients, then we're prepared to.
So if I'm instructed,
Katie.
Yeah. Is that a kit that you've been sent?
that was what Malcolm gave out at the meeting.
Ada mendekati ketika tadi
Make sure they're aware that I'm a patient here. And
Yeah.
They can, from
They,
my name,
they presume they'll send you all the bits
send
to
me
take a
plastic
sample.
bag and so on, yeah.
Gloves and a face mask.
What you need to be aware of is when they send you a plastic bag, it says, please fill in the consent form, which you've already done. So there's therefore nothing in to identify who the dust is from. So you need to then just a little note saying who you are and that you've done the consent form.
Right. Anonymous dust otherwise.
Yes, which is not use.
Not a lot of use.
Anyway, would you? I might have mentioned it before, but would you believe that we had to have consent for this? Because one of the things they discussed in the ethics committee was that your dust contains your skin. So therefore, that's human tissue. So you have to consent. You have to consent to use that.
It would be.
You could just sweep the floor under you.
Alle reddingswerkers eruit, dus we hebben nog.
Workplace
Yes.
microbiomes. And how about hotels? Well, that'd be fascinating.
For the clinic waiting room.
Yeah. Who has the rights of the skin cells in the hotel? But you know, for those people who work in particular locations or who spend a lot of time travelling and staying in hotels, you know, problems might actually come from the microbiome.
I have people complaining that they stay in hotels and the air conditioning smells awful.
Oh, shocking! Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Which are probably stuffed full of all kinds of. Could be.
Clean down.
The aircraft, I mean.
Oh, which brings me. So I'll do. This will be the last thing I do before break. Which brings me to something. Did I tell you what Physio Phil told me this morning? No. I was coming down here and he said, "Oh, I've got a good story for you for a public information thing." His wife has asthma, although it's not fungally sensitive asthma. And in this warm weather, she decided to buy an air cooling device on Amazon. The way this air cooling device works is there's a little dish of water, and you stand up an absorbent material, blow the air across it, so it loses a bit of temperature due to energy of evaporation. Quite a nice idea.
Yeah.
So she's been working very well, and then a few days ago he noticed it smelling rather nastily. And so he opened it up, and this thing that's been standing in the water looks like coffee machine paper. It's absolutely caked in molds and all sorts of stuff. So just a bit of a warning, if you have that type of machine,
Did he say which
worth
brand?
checking.
Which brand it was?
I've got the actual.
Okay.
I put it on Facebook. If you're not a Facebooker, you won't
No, I'm
have
not
seen
a
it.
Facebooker, sorry. Very old-fashioned.
Yes, I can probably show you in the break
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
But my mother used to have one. Well, hers was a big one,
Right.
about 3 foot high, big, and it had a big fan in it. And in the back of it, it was Australian, so she'd seen it, or had been in Australia, and it was packed with straw. And the water was pumped to the top and dribbled down the straw in the back. And it worked. It
Yeah,
did
it
cool
would-
room.
it would be cool, yeah.
Cool room, but presumably they'd be
Unless they've treated that straw with something.
It was
Well,
proper
maybe
straw.
just treat the water as a disinfectant
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
water.
something like that.
Yeah, you could do.
And similar
That's not
principle.
right.
When we were when we went camping when I was a boy, before they provided electricity on campsites, our way to keep the milk cool was to stick the milk in a bowl of water and put a cloth over it,
Yeah.
and it would just stay not freezing cold, but it would be cool.
With the advent of central heating everywhere, they used to say, "Oh, you're getting your air too dry and you've got central heating." What you should do is place a bowl of water
That's right.
near your radiators to humidify the air. And by the way, a bowl of water in your piano to look after your piano.
Did it change the tone of the piano?
Well, it's obviously, I know. But,
so why would you need to humidify this in the winter?
Yeah, well, generally, yes.
Just to humidify?
Because people were running central heating.
It's dry.
I mean,
central heating,
there's
yes.
a whole issue going, isn't it, about ventilation?
Yeah.
Because modern homes with double glazing, carpets and all of that are a very different environment to the sash windows and the draft coming through and all of that. So ventilation is a whole different issue these days than it would have been.
It's a massive issue that.
The general understanding of what's the right type of ventilation in a home seems to me to be wholly inadequate. And it's clearly linked to a lot of the issues that we have.
It is, and even worse, the type of home you just described with the sash windows and everything have now been sealed up, and the fireplaces have been sealed
Absolutely. But they were designed in a way.
And now they grow fungus like a mad thing.
Absolutely. And just one other thing, ionizers.
Yes.
Were a fashion at one time, were they not? Yeah. Your mountain breeze ionizer in the corner of the room, because clearly if you change the charge of the
just go down the London Underground to get it right.
Everything was better,
Yeah. Sea breezes, wasn't it?
Mentally active, and all this stuff. But those things, if you ever saw them, they used to get absolutely black around the.
I'll bet they, because they just.
Where the air was passing.
Yeah.
You have to wonder.
I don't.
You're supposed to have HEPA filters on them.
Ions are irritant, so. I would I've never encouraged the use of ionizers.
No, it died away, didn't it? But it was at one time it was really popular.
Yeah. Well, wasn't the principle behind that if you charge the particles up, they're going to stick together?
That's the idea, and they drop out.
To the floor. Bigger particles, easier to filter.
But I don't know. Sales talk. I can spot it a mile off. Right, so that's probably a good place to stop. I've got so much entertainment planned for the next.
So one of the things we're doing with the Facebook group that we're just about to start getting going on is sort of we haven't settled on a very concise name for it yet, but a kind of coping skills, mindfulness, sort of more the psychological and emotional side of the support, because I think that's something that a lot of people want and don't. When you've got your appointment for 15 minutes, there's not really a good way of building that in at that stage. So what we're doing with the Facebook group is we've got set up a private group, and we're going to start sort of drip feeding in sort of bits of information, exercises, and people can sort of contribute, share tips with each other, say, yeah, that works great for me, put it on the website, or no, I don't want to do that at all. You know, this isn't right for our patient group. I'm not 100% sure how much demand there is from people that don't use Facebook. Is there any, just a quick show of hands, is there anybody here that would like to do that kind of thing? It could be Friday on the same. Oh, cool. Okay, cool. So I'll have a think about what format that could look like. Because we're hopefully in a couple of months we're going to have. I've forgotten what her name is. The nurse.
I've also forgotten what her name is.
I knew it right from Judith is it? Oh yeah. A nurse who has a huge amount of experience about that kind of thing. She's going to come in and give a talk. And also, I've been doing a course about this kind of thing, which has been quite an eye-opener, because it's, you know, when you see in a magazine, mindfulness exercises, often it's quite wishy-washy. You think, you know, yeah, but what about if you're really unwell? But I've been doing a course, and it's more the kind of the hard end of that. So I've been discussing that with the people around my course, and how to adapt that for people that have got Aspergillosis. So for example, like if you read one of these books or anything in a magazine, one of the things they always say is to distract yourself from your problems, focus on your breath, and you think, not in this case. And you know, like say if you're sort of having a hospital admission and you're distressed, the absolute last thing you want to be doing is focusing on your breath. So what we want to do is kind of between everyone kind of find things that works for our group, and then people that come to the patient's website or come to the clinic in future, we can kind of give them like proper tools that they can actually use. But yeah, it's a bit of a new thing for us. So yeah.
Do you think it will effectively replace a mindfulness course that might cost £200, for example? For this group of people, would it be effective?
I think we'll have to see what we end up with, but I think potentially you could end up covering a lot of the same material.
Okay.
But made really tailored.
Yeah.
And especially if we get people comparing, like patients comparing notes about what does and doesn't work, I think we could end up with something that is better than a generic course that you go on.
And would you be envisaging it to maybe happen on a monthly basis, or would it just happen for a number of weeks and then stop, and then do it in a batch sort of thing, or what?
I think it would depend on what people were able to commit to, because it's hard to commit in person. So possibly we would want to look at, can we do anything over sort of Skype, Zoom?
Yeah.
Like if people wanted to attend remotely, because I think saying come in every Monday for 8 weeks, I think that would not make us popular.
So is it something that you're going to have to do for a number of weeks to complete, or can they be done on sort of 1 hour parcels?
So what I had in mind was, so for the Facebook, I'm going to start making little short sort of bite-sized snippets in a logical order for how you would. So sort of first off, understanding how the principles work, and then looking at different ways of applying it.
Yeah.
And then once people have kind of got their heads around that, bringing in exercises and concepts from other types of therapies, because there's a lot out there. But so the NHS offers CBT commonly, but there's lots of other different types out there. So I had in mind sort of follow it through in a logical order on the Facebook group, and then put all of that content on the website, and then say start at this end and work your way down. So because we want people to be able to work through in their own time.
So is this the thing that you're going to put on Facebook once a week on Friday or whatever? Is that a live thing, or is it just be aware that it's going to appear on the Friday and go in and have a look sometime?
So I think my idea would be like put the week's thing up on the Friday, and then people will probably be discussing it for the rest of the week.
Oh, so kind
and
of
then
like
you can go back and scroll down and see everything else.
So a group, you have ongoing discussions and things like that.
Yeah. So what I wasn't sure about was whether there would be people that would want to come in and do it in person. So the one that I've been doing for the last, it's quite an intensive course actually, it's several months. It works much better doing it as a group in person. It works really, really well. Better than doing it out of a book. Because I've tried reading these books and I've never gotten very well with them.
And do you think it would translate over onto Skype or Zoom, or
I think it could,
you get the same sort of group feeling? Yeah?
I think so, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so like if people were willing to do like a bit of a trial taster, it would kind of help us out as well actually.
Would that be open to patients and carers, or are you looking at just patients?
I'm expecting patients and carers to have different needs from the course. So somebody who's a patient, for example, might want more help with chronic pain and have a lot of time, whereas somebody who's a carer, especially somebody who works, time is at an absolute premium, but they might just want something, sort of a way of sort of stepping back and carving out a bit of time to breathe. Yeah. So they could be like, I think the group would be open to everyone, with the understanding that it might need a bit of.
So it's sort of pain, anxiety, stress.
Sleep. Sleep's a big one. Sleep's a big one.
So how many people have problems sleeping? We're doing it now using the same system with Manchester University. Yeah. So there you go. Sleep's a big selling point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
And I'm going to try and bring in as many, because there's a lot of resources out there, but some of them are quite low quality. But I've been sort of looking to do like a sort of a curated set of these are actually the good stuff.
And I noticed this morning, or might have been yesterday, Manchester Carers Group Society are holding a free mindfulness session for carers. They've just advertised it yesterday, I think it was. There was a session going on there, which might be worth looking at.
Okay, yeah, that would be really good.
Yeah.
Because I think part of doing it as a group is once you sort of get into the nitty gritty, you realise everybody's exactly in the same boat, and it's just such a relief. So that would probably work quite well.
Okay, cool.
If carers were dedicated.
Right, so I will put the appropriate links onto the website when we put this talk up onto the website. Right now this is going into Facebook, and what that means is Facebook will actually save the whole thing, so I'll also add it below the Facebook video as well. Great.
So yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully have something more to report.
And on. There's only one person left on Facebook, I think. They don't like the breaks. Two. Right. Okay, so start off with another question. How many people are aware of any announcements about heatwave, official announcements about heatwave over the last few weeks? Because the talk about...
They said they're putting out a new thing, aren't they, the amber warnings and things, but I haven't heard it actually.
I've seen no announcements anywhere. I've not...
Ones have been put stuff on
Twitter, but has it been on the BBC, ITV? I haven't seen it anywhere. Okay.
Pollen count's on, isn't it?
On the weather forecast.
Yeah.
Right. So, I have a theory. The BBC used to talk about and give us heat warnings, heat wave warnings, and those were official warnings, not just a newspaper saying we're having a heat wave. It's actually these things, a health alert from the NHS. This is put out. These warnings are put out by the Met Office, and the Met Office no longer work with the BBC. So I suspect these have disappeared off the radar, which is why we're not seeing them. Because I've been looking for them, and I found this, which is Heat Health Watch Alert, and it actually has been. That's the 5th of July, the 3rd of July. There have been warnings going on every few days, and I've been completely unaware of it. So I might have to ask someone about that.
They did say about a young girl dying of asthma the other day because the air quality was so bad.
So
where she lives.
That was in London, wasn't it? And that was the first one who's actually been directly linked to particulates, wasn't it? PM10s or something like that.
We were wondering whether the fires would affect some of the asthmatics as well, the fires.
It's bad.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone's recording that, whether there's a rise in asthma attacks because of the smoke.
Well, that's it. How would we actually
Well, that's right. People
record it?
There'd be exacerbations, but would anyone connect it with the air quality on Saddleworth?
So
or the vicinity?
You record your stats annually. You don't
I don't know whether anyone would look at that, but I think we probably should.
And Manchester is the particulate capital of this country, according to the news a few weeks ago. So there is a website which is run by nhs.uk, and which is Healthy Body, and it tells you how to cope in the hot weather. I think I talked about this the last time we had a heat wave 5 years ago or something. And it goes through the points about what the alerts are, what's level 1, level 2, level 3. We're currently at level 3 because it's actually happening. The idea is that you know about level 1, then you can prepare. You know about level 2, it's going to happen. And at the moment, I think we're only aware of level 3. It's happening. So I think it's quite important. And this is something I need to put up on the patient's website. There's also, I didn't know, a level 4, which is a severe heat wave. Don't know what that is. So, yes, to be aware, we're in hot weather. We all know that. the various things you can do to protect against it, which there's the URL at the top of that slide to go and have a look at this information. Obvious stuff: shut the windows, pull down the shades. Almost on a daily basis at the moment, I'm having an argument with my wife. She closes the curtains and I open the curtains.
Yeah, we have that in our house.
Yeah.
He shuts the window.
I hate living in a cave, I really do. And she says, it keeps the heat out. And you can't possibly keep the heat out. Anyway, the official... Shush. Dark curtains can make the room hotter. As a compromise, we've got dark curtains, but the other side's got light material. I think I may have lost that one, so keep that to yourself. Stay out of the sun at the hottest time. These are sort of things that grown-ups have been doing for a long time. Shutting the curtains is great. Having shutters, obviously, is brilliant. So I guess if this starts to become the norm, then having shutters fitted to the outside of your windows would work brilliantly to keep the heat out. Not so much in my home, because the upper floor it's a dormer house, so the upper floor is almost sort of a flat roofed building, and it gets quite hot, which isn't fantastic, especially when your wife turns the fan off. Cool. No, I just the winning hand. Cool baths and showers. Cold drinks.
Listening to the recording, you're going to get a good beating when you get home.
No, well, she's actually currently working in a flat roof nursery thing.
She's probably listening.
33 degrees. Ridiculous. The bit I didn't know: avoid drinks high in sugar. Not quite sure why that would be.
Good idea, Jim.
Maybe that's plugged into the general diet advice.
Yeah.
I think excess alcohol will actually get through that hot day quite quickly, I would have thought. But anyway.
Didn't you say when the sun's on the front of your house, close the windows at the front?
Yeah.
And open the ones at the back?
Yeah.
And then vice versa when it's going around.
Yeah. Once the outside is cooler, it does sort of say that then it's time to open.
Yeah.
It's got to be cooler outside,
There's loads more. Listen to the alerts on the radio, TV and social media. Right. We've just established that there's none. We can't find any on the TV. I'm going to have a go at the BBC about that. They must be on the radio. Social media, Twitter apparently is the place to go. Public Health England. So I'll add that into the advice. But just be prepared.
The thing is, though, then you've got to actually think about doing that. Whereas if you're watching the weather on the BBC or the ITV, then they just say it at the end, don't they? So you haven't got to make a conscious effort then.
Yeah.
So it's more important for you to do it as part of the weather for, or even on the BBC weather app.
Yes, true. I think it's the BBC weather app that I've been trying to see if. No, it's not BBC. It was ITV. They do fungal counts over the summer. I think we noticed last year, and I wanted to check to see if they're doing it again this year. I don't know if they are. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute because it crosses over with something else. Did you know environmental health workers can visit a home to inspect it for hazards to health, including excess heat? Your local authority will provide such a worker.
I bet they looked at that.
Can you imagine?
5 months' time.
If we ever get another 7-week heat wave. So that's all pretty routine stuff, but worthwhile pointing out, and I really would like to investigate why we're not getting these warnings properly anymore. Right, we now have something called the Aspergillosis Trust. You might be old enough to remember we used to have the Aspergillus Trust. That was formed by a group of patients back in early 2000s, and that ran for a number of years. And eventually was absorbed into the Fungal Infectious Trust because the people running it no longer wanted to run it. They couldn't find people to replace them. But it was great while it lasted, and They are behind some of the information leaflets that are still on the website to this day. So that they made a very positive contribution. Well, this is another group of patients, this time based on Facebook. And the suggestion was, you might be aware that we have a weekly chat online on, it used to be Skype, it's now something called Zoom, which is essentially similar to Skype. There's maybe up to 10 of us meet on a Thursday morning at 11 o'clock just to have a supportive chat, somewhat like this. And we came up with this idea, and one person said, I live up the road from various celebrities, and I could walk down the road and try and get them interested in supporting the Fungal Infection Trust, because presumably having a lot of time on their hands, they've been watching things like Celebrity Countdown and Celebrity, what's the one with the tumbler thing, Tipping Point. And when they do that, they all nominate a kind of obscure charity. Yes, you all watch it, you watch.
I'm worried about you now, Graham.
It's on at 5 o'clock when I go home. They thought, well, we need to be sort of at that level of consciousness. We need to get some celebrities interested in supporting us. Okay. So we thought, well, we do something very simple. Just get a celebrity to take a selfie saying, I support the Aspergillosis Trust, and post it back to us. And we've written a website that does this. I could probably even show it to you now. Yes, I can. Okay. There's not much on it. Now, here it comes. Okay. So, right, it loads a different image each time you reboot it. So it's very simple. It tells you about the trust. There's a blog which is written by a patient, Jill Fairweather, who's the person who makes all the Christmas cards. And she does a very nice blog about every week or so. A little bit about fundraising. This is it. We're calling this an advocacy group, although you could call it a non-registered charity. And it does not raise funds for itself. It raises funds exclusively for the Fungal Infection Trust, which is great. But its major effort to start with was to get these selfies. And they've had some success. Some of them you might recognise, some of them you won't. So we got somebody got Alan Titchmarsh to hold up one of our little cards, which was very nice. Other people, rather like you at the back there, I don't recognise, but I think maybe Chris might. This person.
Coronation Street.
Yeah.
I don't know what she is, but yes, I recognise it.
Oh yes, you do. This person.
And there's the right.
Yeah, they married in the show, right? And that's another person off Coronation Street, I believe. So someone's been hanging around the streets, grabbing onto these people. We have others. This person, Emily Grossman, is a sciencey presenter type person on telly. She's done TEDx things, and you may have seen her if you're interested into science presentation and that sort of thing. She's agreed to be a patron of this new trust, which is very good of her. And I would like her to use her presentational skills to develop some videos for us about aspergillosis, because that would be quite good. And this person is also a patron. This is Liz Yeller, who is actually an Olympic marathon runner. The only reason you might not know of her is because she's best mates with the main Olympic women.
Jessica
No, the other one. Marathon. Paula Radcliffe. She's best mates with Paula Radcliffe, and she competes with Paula Radcliffe in the Olympics. But she's obviously, I think she came 10th or something like that. She's been at 2 Olympics, so she's an Olympian. And for Twitter followers, she has a Twitter account down there. So Girl What Runs. So they've got 2 patrons. They've got support from quite a few celebrities. And somebody's dog.
Somebody needs to go to
Somebody like that.
Cheshire Show with
He needed a haircut, that one. He needed a haircut. He needs to lose about 3 stone as well. So they've actually had some quite good success, and they're now there's 2 or 3. There's 3 people quite active, and they're producing things like shopping bag and those supermarket keyring things that substitute for pound coins, and a lot of promotional material that they're going to circulate just to raise awareness. We're also looking at developing an information sheet to give out to people like GPs in places in the remoter corners of the country where people have to go and say, I've got aspergillosis, and they don't know what you're talking about.
Our doctor.
Yeah.
You've got a new doctor.
So it's going to be aimed at GPs and similar.
certainly needs educating.
There's a lot of fun putting a sticker on the car. I did the other day. I think we put it on the outside rather than the inside. That's probably what all the commas.
Which sticker was that?
I might look well, but
oh, those, yes, they've all. So all of those stickers have gone, and
that's next on the inside, isn't it?
I think they're developing some more. I think those particular ones are meant to go on the outside, oddly enough.
It is on the outside, yeah, but it kept coming. Every time you pulled it off, it came off, and then we put each little thing on, didn't we? The commas didn't come. I got like the commas in the end.
Okay, so that's actually being really quite, and that's developing quite fast. They're working quite hard on this, and I'm sort of trying to support it as best I can. So that's really useful. Okay, we've covered all that. It's based around this Facebook group, and that's where if you wanted to get involved, join this Facebook group. And
there's a ball coming up, isn't there, in November?
Yes.
Yes, it's
25th, is it?
Yeah.
Something like that. I haven't been able to find out too much other than it's in Hale.
Yeah.
Hyde.
Yes.
And they want someone. We've got to get someone from the FIT to go and do a talk for them, but it might end up with me. I don't have black tie, I'm afraid.
That's all right.
No, I'm not wearing black tie. There's a close-up of the leaf that they're using. We've designed this logo, which is a pair of lungs. We've got little blobs in your lungs to represent the cavities or the aspergilloma.
It's a pity that the word itself is so similar to asbestosis, isn't it?
Yes. Or Aspergillus.
Or Aspergillus,
yeah.
But particularly asbestosis, because there's a lung picture on there.
Yeah. That touches on what I'm going to talk about next, actually.
You promised me before. I was
just ahead of the game. So this is really, and what I'm finding is this is getting a lot more take up than talking about the Fungal Infection Trust. People are immediately recognising Aspergillosis Trust, what it's about, what it's for, and it's specific. Whereas Fungal Infection Trust is kind of, So it's actually catching on quite nicely. So watch this space, sort of thing. Right. Okay. How am I doing? I should we'll go to this one first because you want to get out fairly soon. I'll do another 10 minutes. We have a lot of patients who have difficulty getting here. People from a long way away who have to get all the way to Manchester, and then they arrive at Piccadilly or possibly Stockport Station, and negotiating that last 10 miles very expensive, you need a taxi or you're trying to use a tram or whatever. It's really quite off-putting. And if you're already having difficulty breathing, that last bit's really quite taxing. So I realised that the British Red Cross actually provide transport services for hospitals to help the NHS. It's based around patients with little support in hospital, and then they'll get them home, and then they'll make sure they're okay at home, and they'll provide support for up to 12 weeks after that as well. So what I've asked them for is, could they cover, because they employ volunteer drivers, can they cover from the railway station to here and remove the problem with that last step? Might encourage people who are really quite ill to get referral, because it makes it so much easier to get here. And they have replied, and they've put me in touch with the local representative, and we're going through, it's quite detailed what our patients would need, because there might be some people might have wheelchairs, some people might have oxygen cylinders, and they've got to be prepared to provide that. We're not coming here for half an hour and then leaving, we're coming here all day, sort of thing. So we're collaborating with the Red Cross. I'm hoping that we can get some support at this end. They will ask for petrol money, but
it's cheaper than a taxi.
It's a lot cheaper than a taxi, and it might just help people get here and get back to the station. They responded straight away and said, yes, we already do this for Wythenshawe Hospital. So I think the chances are quite good that we'll be able to do something. I don't know who they support here.
If you go from the main entrance, the old main entrance, outpatient,
yeah,
the Red Cross ambulances out front.
Right. So they obviously are already doing it. Maybe it's for cardiology or something like that they're doing it for. So we weren't aware of that. So this might help some people, and also people that are finding it expensive to do the trip as well. Might help. So that's on the cards. Right. A lot of you may be familiar with this website. Okay, this is the patient's website. The URL says, you can't read it, nacpatients.org.uk. There's a lot of information on there. I've now added this to the corner. But it was written in 2012. And it looks very dense. And what we're finding is two things. I regularly come across people on Facebook who've never heard of it, never been there, not aware of it, and the actual figures for visitors are dropping or have dropped. It used to get something like 25,000 visits a month. It now gets about 12,000 visits a month. But that
a link from the email that was sent out. So when the email comes out and you go onto it, on the front page there was a link to the patients and carers, but that still said the last time I went on, because I've not been out on it because it's out of date.
It was the wrong month.
It was Thursday. No, it was Thursday.
Oh,
it still said it was on a Thursday, and it's not been a Thursday for a long time.
Yeah.
So I kept having a look, and because it all seems so out of date, that's why I stopped looking.
Well, it has got a bit out of date, very out of date in parts. It used to have. We tried to get people to go on there and write stuff, but virtually nobody did. So it's just not really working as we intended. So we are going to attempt to modernise it. One suggestion as a model is this one, which is the British Lung Foundation website, which is completely different. There's hardly any text on there. They're just very specific points. Okay. Read our information, find support in your area, fundraise, or we wouldn't need that bit, discover our research, we could do a little bit of that, make a donation, explore our shop. So we would, three of them are out to do with fundraising. We wouldn't be doing that on the NAC website. But it's brighter, it's more attractive, it points you directly at things that, there you go, look after your lungs in the hot weather, things that are up to date and relevant. and lots of attractive pictures as well. Now that's basically a fundraising website. It's a magazine type website that I think is quite a nice representation of what we could make the patient's website into. So what I was going to ask you guys with 5 minutes left is what do you think our list of questions should be, or our list on the front page should be more like? And I suggest we need to have something on it that says what is aspergillosis. David's very fond of saying what is aspergillus. I don't think that's what we're that interested in. We want to know about the disease rather than the fungus.
Yeah.
But equally, what isn't aspergillosis? Because I get increasing numbers of people who've been exposed environmentally to aspergillosis. They get some diagnostics, they get a blood test, it's IgE, says aspergillus, and from that they assume they've got aspergillosis. So steering them away to somewhere where that's more helpful might be better. Where can I get help and advice? Is there a patient support group? So we would essentially use this to point them at Facebook. What about carers? We'll try and do have a section about carers would be really good. We need to do more with carers. I'm not quite sure what to deliver about carers. Maybe we need a meeting about that and tell them about the Aspergillosis Trust.
You would link to all the leaflets. Rather like what we've got in the...
There's, well, so the point of those, to the information leaflets.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And make them more upfront.
Yes.
Now, uses for the blower. So, just as that leaflet is driven by what we talk about, what we want in it, I would suggest that this new website is led by what the community wants in it, rather than what we think you want to know. Okay. The major communities for that would probably be the Facebook communities. So it effectively could become something that's fed by Facebook. And the problem with that is not everyone goes on Facebook. So some people don't go on Facebook.
So you need a point where can I get information other than Facebook? So that
well, Facebook's the community that leads here rather than the other way around. So I've tried. There are other communities outside of Facebook, but they're almost completely inactive. So there doesn't seem to be any demand outside of Facebook to support a community. So I think Facebook is the community. This website will be fed from Facebook, but it's not all about Facebook. We want people to go into Google to type in aspergillosis and get this information, because that's the other way people are going to find it. So consequently, this URL is wrong, because we want the URL to say something about aspergillosis. That will bring people there much better. The NAC patients, because originally it was designed just to be an information site for this clinic, I think we should probably broaden that out and say it's about aspergillosis information. So any comments? What other things could we put on the front page? And I'm particularly exploring what support you could do for carers. Because there's one charity, and there's some support with funding from the government, a little bit, but other than that, I still don't think there's very much to offer people who care for people. And they need better support now. Best stuff supports carers, which I think would be really good. But what other support do you think carers need, really?
Well, I suppose, there's a difference what they'll need at the outset and what they'll need ongoing. I think there are two different things potentially, because at the outset they need all the information that says what is the condition, what are you likely to see in the person you're caring for, what
focused
should you
information,
be doing as a carer?
Yeah.
What are all the contacts you need, particularly in emergency and so on?
Yeah.
That's all the kind of upfront stuff.
Sort of like a new diagnosis landing page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then on an
yeah.
ongoing basis, they really want here's new information about treatment, here's new information about
Drugs.
whatever it might be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's that. It seems to me there are two separate.
And do you, and is it, are carers a distinct community? Are they obviously have different needs. So should we treat them as a separate community, or should we treat everybody together?
I think you need some sort of thing like, understanding my diagnosis, and then you need something where the carers, how can I help
Yeah.
somebody who's just been diagnosed with?
Yeah.
And, there's a couple of separate headings, isn't there? Because some people will go on there and they don't really know the diagnosis, they just got this Aspergillosis thing. Some will have been given a diagnosis, they may have been to a clinic and know what they're looking for. And then it's how the carer supports that person with that diagnosis. In lots of ways, isn't there?
In terms of treating them separately, it's tricky. I think in some ways you're more likely to get to them if you deal with them with the patients.
Yeah.
I think they might be more likely to get involved, possibly. Having said that, there might be times when they want a discussion just amongst carers, particularly when they want to moan about their patient.
Oh, we did that a couple of times here, didn't we? A few years back, we said patients go out there, carers, and that was quite good. I mean, we probably should do that again.
But it can be available there, whether people choose to use it,
I think carers will want to know what can I do to help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think so.
That's it's as purely simple as that.
And what to look out for.
And what to expect. The fact that fatigue.
Because it's very much
that people aren't just saying, "Oh, I'm tired," and are off going to. Because if you don't understand, that can really get up your nose. Because people are a bit lazy, well, you're going to bed and they can't do this and they can't, and suddenly you're left with all the things that you used to share are suddenly all on you, and that's very difficult to understand. And I think that is a big thing of knowing that not everybody might have these symptoms.
It's an individual thing, but
you might,
it might
be that these are the sort of things that you can expect.
Because you'll know what will work for you, and you'll know what will work for you.
But I think that actually applies probably to a lot of
Because
people
you'll
that
read it,
care.
you might think, no, that's never going to work. But then you might read something else and think, oh, I'll try that. That might be worth doing. So there'll be different things, but it is very
So it is
basis,
knowing what to expect the illness to do to the patient, that so that you're not left in a panic situation. It gives you more understanding, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, I guess like knowing how bad does it need to get before I need, like at what point do I need to call an ambulance?
Yes, or a nurse, or just do I need to ring up for advice?
Some people will react fairly quickly to, say, side effects or, hypothesis. But then other people are quite relaxed about it, surprisingly enough. I mean, I'd be going, but some people are like, oh yeah, I've just been coughing up blood, oh, I'm what Joe, a cupful, right? Okay. So some people, that said, some people are used to that amount, it's normal well, it's not normal, but they're used to what's happening to them and they deal with it, and other people go into complete. So it's knowing it is very much down to the individual and how they.
But it's knowing that that's something that you can expect.
And
that's
and
the
then
thing.
it can point to questions like, have you got this drug in? Has the doctor given you this drug? So in case of hemoptysis, have you got tranexamic acid? What kind of other drugs are you on? And then advice to seek attention.
So that sort of thing, that's still focused on the patient though, isn't it? All that information.
Yeah, but you need you always need a mirror image of it.
You do.
Carer, don't you?
And I'm thinking like
carers.
carers.
Who's going to click on it? Do you? So you want the patient.
But relationships being how they are, And this is exactly how it works in my
The patient
relationship.
might not want to trouble his wife or
Well, that,
something,
you've
so
got,
he'll
you've
just
got,
look himself.
you've got the patient who's clearly ill, and attention and energy all seems to go in one direction.
Yeah.
So you have to, for carers to talk to each other, they're able to say to each other, well, you know, doesn't have to be like that. It's fine to look after yourself more than maybe
you have
do.
to have it in parallel, really. I think that's a choice that they will make. So the individual might think, oh, I'll just have a quick look, I don't really want to bother them. Equally, the carer might think, I'll go and have a quick look on that. I'll not say anything unless there's something there that's useful. Or, you know, so I think they have to run in parallel, to be honest, that it's available for both patients and
a lot of it could be.
And it can vary,
It could be the same
Yeah,
on
some of them will
both,
be the
because
same.
I might click
Yeah,
on the carer bit.
Yeah.
The patient might click on the patient bit,
Yeah.
but you need to know both.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a carer might not click on the patient.
Yeah,
So you
that's
both.
right.
So although it's duplicating the information,
It doesn't matter.
you
There
are
are different spins on
title
it.
is targeting a different.
Yeah.
different
Okay.
people.
Right. That's useful. Thank you very much. So yes, I'll let you out 5 minutes early for being good.
Can I just one quick question?
Yeah.
Aspergillus sinusitis.
Yes.
Is that something that has ever been discussed here, or is?
We don't particularly discuss it here. I think of it more of as an environmental exposure issue. It's a controversial issue. There are papers saying that they have looked at mucus or the sinuses of 100 patients that were chronic sinusitis, very difficult to treat, always coming back, and found 90 of them have got fungus growing in their nose, in their sinuses, and that hadn't been realised. So I think it's a really important thing, especially with environmental exposures.
A diagnosis, though, would be difficult to scan.
Apparently it is. Quite often people only find out when the doctor goes up there with an endoscope and starts scraping around and pulls out some mould.
And the key is getting cultures done, because quite often people go in for them procedures and they don't necessarily have culture.
And doctors will treat bacteria all the time.
So if we get any really stress, then we go for it and send fungal culture.
Yeah.
Because
it's the clinician's routine, isn't it? It's just look for bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. We will be back here on August 3rd, which I flagged. We might do. I was thinking of doing Beth's thing with the nurse coming next month, but that might not be arranged in time. And we have a patient with bronchial aspergillosis who wants to come in and give us a talk, which I'll try and make happen in August. Thank you. Safe journey home. Fast journey home-ish. We could switch to 1 o'clock from next month. It's possible. I don't see anyone else I need to ask. So if that's a unanimous thing that we could do, well, I'm sure it's the same for everybody else.
The roads are the same for everybody else.
Yeah.
Sandwiches at 12:30.
Yeah, sandwiches. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, I'll just have to adjust it slightly. Yeah, I can arrange that. We'll do that from next time. If I forget and you all turn up, because I'm getting a bit old now.
For the other regulars.
Do we need to remind you?
I tell everybody to remind me about everything, because we'll try and do that from next month. I think we can stop this. Thank you. Thank you and good night.
So on that dusting, I'll send in my consent form as per the request for the meeting, and I'll do it by that route.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah, thank you.
You'll get a little pad with a bag.
Going to borrow that?
Yes.
Fascinating book.
I thought I've got the consent form here, but do you have that back? Always got my name.
Chris did, but I'm not sure whether it's. Do we have a library thing?
Presumably.
Oh yeah, I do. I can make a note.
So the only bit I think I was sending back, they were asking me to send in was the consent form. But I suppose if they've got your name
Don't
and
lean
you
on
know
that.
that you're actually a patient, it's easy enough for them to then get your address and everything else.
It's been like that for years.
Sticker on it.
Oh, with the
We're gonna have
wobbly
it
table.
removed.
Yeah, like a bit of a wobble.
Yeah, well, certainly when you send the dust back, they need to know. Yeah. Right.
Right, that's fine. Yeah, we'll see you soon, yeah.
He's actually a colleague. He works in the same department. He's in Manchester. I didn't realise.
Oh, I've got a book as well. Where do you sign?
Yeah, well, you were sneaking off with the book.
I was. Sorry. I couldn't find it.
That's all right.
Right, I'll see you in Alton.
Thank you very much.
And in terms of the 1 o'clock kick-off, that's not, is that what we're talking next one?
I will try and do it for next month.
Too popular.
I think.
I'll
Just
assume that.
yeah. We might have a couple of months where people come in half an hour late, but everyone will get the message sooner or later.
Right. Let's do it.
You're almost relieved when you hear it go down that they've given up.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
There you go. Responsive care.
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments.
Yeah. I was going to ask them something, but we ran out of time, so I might do that next month.
Yeah. Who would have thought we'd run out of time?
I know. So I might do that next time, and or might even refine it. I've got some questions about